For Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honored as always to rise in this House. I've been here 20 years, and I have never seen a time when I feel that our country and our planet is as at risk as it is now, a time when people should be looking to parliamentarians to come together to deal with solutions. Instead, we are dealing with yet another Conservative motion which shows that the Conservative Party leader's entire economic plan could fit on a lapel button. I think what's missing in the discussion today, in the fact that we are in the midst of a crisis globally, with Europe worried that they're dealing with a massive expansion of a potential war with Putin, the need for Canada to be a strong ally, contrary to the member who lives at Stornoway. Ukraine is not some faraway land, as he quotes Neville Chamberlain. It's the front line in the fight for democracy. This is something we should be coming together on. We're seeing a mass humanitarian disaster unfolding in Gaza, with Canada cutting off supplies at a time as people are facing starvation. This is a humanitarian disaster that Canadians could step up for. Instead, we are siding with Netanyahu. We are dealing with the fact that every hour, 30 million tons of ice melt from the Greenland ice floes. 30 million tons an hour. Last year, 200,000 Canadians were forced out of their homes from climate fires. And yet we had the Conservative leader flying in to the fire zones to brag that he was going to make burning fossil fuels free. So when I read this motion, the audacity to claim, the Liberals do not really have an environmental plan, that's something we should be arguing. They don't. But the Conservatives refuse to put forward a climate plan other than let the planet burn. That is the sum total of what I've heard from the Conservatives for the last 3 years, is let the planet burn. At a time when our young people are facing a future that is increasingly unstable, we're left with yet another dismal debate in the House of Commons on slogans and bumper sticker excuses. When Kelowna was facing a potential catastrophic disaster of fire, we had the member for Kelowna bragging that her government, if they form government, they would make fossil fuel burning free. In Alberta, I was there last week. There was just a little bit of powder of snow on the ground in January. It's above freezing now. They are now coming into the 4th year of a serious drought. 13 counties in Alberta have declared environmental disasters because they can't get their crops out. In 2021, the cattle farmers were talking about only 36% of their crops were in good condition. That was 2021. They made it through that year by getting the holdover of hay from 2020. Well, now coming into 2024 with no snow on the ground, we're seeing rivers drying up, and not a single Conservative from Alberta or Saskatchewan has ever bothered to stand up to defend their farmers in the face of the biggest climate crisis since the dirty 30s. They'd throw them under the bus to satisfy their leader who lives in a 19-room mansion because it's about letting the planet burn. The Conservatives from British Columbia who get up and falsely try and mislead their own citizens that they're paying a federal carbon tax when there isn't one. Not a single Conservative from British Columbia has dared stand up in the House to talk about the fact that the rising hydro prices in BC are from the depleted reservoirs from the droughts. That British Columbia, a hydro superpower, had to import 20% of its energy capacity last year because it could not keep the lights on because of the droughts and the low reservoirs. That is the effect of the climate crisis. So we're dealing with real-time planetary breakdown of the disappearance of the ice shelves, of unprecedented fires, where much of last summer across from Chicago across North America. Children couldn't go outside without getting sick. What did we hear from the Conservatives? Let the planet burn. Now, the other thing that I find in all my years, there were times when we came together on simple things, like jobs. But that's not in the Conservative agenda, because they would rather, they tell people that Canada's broken. Even though we were voted #1 in the world, if Canada's not broken, they will make it broken. And so with Bill C-49, a bill so that Canada could get in the game with the clean energy projects that are taking off in the United States. Right now, since 2021 under the Biden administration, $360 billion in clean energy projects have gotten off the ground. And they're not getting off the ground here for two reasons. One, well, you know, the Liberals, they're trying to get their tax credits and they're trying to work it all out. Biden's getting that money out the door. But we're also seeing the Conservatives blocking sustainable jobs legislation, doing every kind of monkey-wrenching, idiotic stunt to stop workers from having a seat at the table. But even more astounding is Bill C-49, where the Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia premiers have called for Ottawa to come to the table because the United States is moving ahead so rapidly on offshore wind development. Wind development that is going to set up projects for construction and long-term jobs in the hundreds of thousands of homes that are being getting clean energy. But the Conservatives from Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia, they are determined to block jobs because that's what their leader said, make Canada broken. If it's not broken, we're going to break it, because what's their plan is to let the planet burn. Now, here's the thing. The Premier of Nova Scotia said, Bill C-49 is a necessary first step in unlocking our energy potential. Yet the member for Cumberland Colchester said, there's no economic, the guy who's just been elected, how many, two years now, maybe 3 years, announcing that he's going to oppose offshore development and jobs in Nova Scotia. That we had the member for the Costa Bay Central Notre Dame who said he thought the poor Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador had been hoodwinked, telling us that the Premier wasn't bright enough to negotiate good construction and permanent jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador. There was a time, Mr. Speaker, where we would have all worked to get those jobs off the ground, because we know sustainability in every part of Canada is important. But these are clean energy jobs, and that's something that the leader of the Conservative Party doesn't want to have happen, because what's his environmental plan? It's let the planet burn. You know, they talk about affordability. It was the Conservatives who led the fight against taking the HST off home heating. This isn't about making it easier for people. It's about making people angrier. That is his one plan. But what really concerns me now is that we're dealing in the midst of a climate catastrophe that's unfolding in real time, and we need to bring our plans to the table. We need to be debating them. We need to find out how Canada can, number one, get in the clean energy market that is taking off in China, taking off in Europe, taking off in the United States, while we're sitting at the side of the road. But even more is the need to reassure this young generation that we will have their backs in trying to address the catastrophic collapse of the ice shelves, the unimaginable burning that we saw last year, that we still have fires burning in northern Alberta today. That is unprecedented. The northern boreal forest burned at an unprecedented rate. And yet, what do we hear from the Conservatives? They don't have an environmental plan. They have a bumper sticker slogan, and if you push them hard, it's let the planet burn. Well, I didn't come here to tell my kids and their next generation of kids, guess what? We let the planet burn because it was easy. Yeah, it's easy to let the planet burn. And yes, it's going to be hard to make sure that we stand up for our kids. Yes, it's going to be hard to stand up to Putin. Yes, it's going to be hard to come together. But we need to do that as a nation right now, because this is a nation that will be judged on the absolute failure to put forward a plan in the midst of the biggest existential crisis the human race has faced, and it needs something better than a bumper sticker and a toxic lapel pin slogan.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Mission Mascouche Fraser Canyon.
Madam Speaker, when I was listening to the member from Timmins in Ontario speak about the floods and the fires that happened in Mission Mascouche Fraser Canyon, I could not but remember the order paper question I received this week, which outlined that the government came to my riding on multiple occasions, said we're giving billions of dollars to help rebuild British Columbia, to help rebuild the climate infrastructure that we need for the future. Madam Speaker, barely a penny of it has arrived, and just this week the Sumas River is on flood warning again. Just this week we're about to have another flood. The government could have fixed that, but they can't because the NDP back up everything this irresponsible slogan government does, and my communities is suffering because they're not taking action on the very things they talk about day in and day out. When will the money for the DFAA to fix British Columbia actually be allocated to the communities that need it the most?
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Well, we finally see someone from British Columbia stand up and actually speak for his community that is facing a climate disaster. Because what have we seen? We've seen, get that tax off, let's burn the planet, All the people in British Columbia who are not paying a federal carbon tax, we got to get them all stoked. So I would like to say to the member, yeah, he's ground zero in the climate catastrophe, and his leaders' response is, let them burn. He's done nothing. Does that member have a climate plan? No, he doesn't. He's got a bumper sticker slogan and some little toxic lapel pin that says, let them burn. That's their only response. They're leaving their people behind. We will stand up.